This is the Week in Review for thetrumpet.com, Friday, April 22nd, 2011. Thousands of protesters marched through Syrian cities today in what is being called Great Friday. On Tuesday, Syria did away with its emergency law. Before it was lifted, the nation had been in a state of emergency for 48 years, which gave extra power to Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and his government. However, daily protests have swept through the nation for a number of weeks now, and Assad has found his regime in danger. In an effort to quell angry Syrians, Assad coupled his promise of reform with a strong threat against demonstrators. But today, the Syrian people have responded with mass protests. There are several reports that Syrian troops and plainclothes secret police have fired on protesters. Currently, Syria is closely allied with Iran, but biblical prophecy indicates that this alliance will fracture even as Iran's power grows. Continue to watch the upheaval in Syria and expect a break between Tehran and Damascus. In Egypt, the Muslim Brotherhood is strengthening Islamist initiatives and political parties ahead of parliamentary elections in September, and many fear that this will mean that radical Islam will dominate Egypt's new democracy. The Brotherhood is Egypt's largest Islamic organization and is the founder of Hamas. The Telegraph states that the movement is now even stronger than the middle-class activists who overthrew former President Hosni Mubarak. The military council arrested Mubarak and his two sons last week and have detained them for questioning in order to placate the Brotherhood. Frontrunner Amr Moussa conceded that it is inevitable that Islamic factions will be the new bedrock of Egypt's political system. This is a reality the Trumpet has predicted for 18 years. Potential Egyptian presidential candidate Mohammed El-Baradei is showing his true colors. The former nuclear watchdog for the United Nations stated this month that if Israel attacked Gaza, we would declare war against the Zionist regime. On Tuesday, he praised the arrest of Mubarak, who was one of the few Middle Eastern leaders upon whom Israel could more or less rely. El-Baradei's statements underline a new reality. Egypt's leaders must take a hard stance against Israel if they want to placate Egyptians on the street and the powerful Muslim Brotherhood. Egypt's new government has already taken steps to both distance itself from Mubarak's policies and draw closer to the mullahs in Iran. On Monday, Tehran and Cairo announced warming relations between their two nations. Iran appointed an ambassador to Egypt for the first time in more than 30 years. The Egyptian government confirmed that its new foreign minister is contemplating a trip to the Gaza Strip, which is controlled by Iran's Palestinian terrorist proxy, Hamas, a group Cairo had previously shunned. Egypt's new direction and its quick migration to radical Islam is about to unhinge the Middle East's delicate balance of power. While Croatia's relationship with the European Union is warming up, Turkey is being left out in the cold. On Tuesday, Croatia concluded another round of EU membership negotiations about agriculture and budgetary issues. After the meetings, an EU spokesman said that if Croatia can make a stronger effort to fight corruption and organized crime and cooperate with the International War Crimes Tribunal, it may be able to wrap up negotiations by June. On the same day, a meeting with the Turkish negotiation team merely assessed how stalled the process was. Turkey and Croatia began their quest to enter the European Union on the same day in 2005. The Trumpet expects that no matter what concessions Ankara gives, it will never become a member of the Union as Europe becomes more and more Catholic and less tolerant of Islam. Ukraine announced on Monday that it will join Union Shield 2011, a joint military exercise between Russia and Belarus. The September exercise will be held simultaneously at 2 training centers and involve 50 aircraft, 200 pieces of hardware, and 12,000 troops. On Wednesday, Ukraine pledged to enhance political trust with China and to increase its cooperation with Beijing across the board. Continue to watch as nations from Ukraine to China and almost everywhere in between bond into a gigantic Asian power. Leaders of the BRICS nations gathered in southern China last week to discuss, among other things, diversifying away from the U.S. dollar. The BRICS nations include Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, which represent 40% of the global population, 18% of world trade, and almost half of economic growth. In a joint declaration, the 5 countries stated that the existing world financial system is deficient and that they support a broad-based international reserve currency system. Though they disagree on some issues, BRICS nations are united against U.S. leadership of the global economy. If these and other nations succeed in replacing the dollar as the world's primary reserve currency, it would devastate America's economy. Christian-Muslim violence has broken out in Nigeria. Last Saturday, incumbent President Goodluck Jonathan, a Christian, was re-elected. When the Independent National Electoral Commission certified the election as fair and released the results on Monday, riots immediately broke out in the country's Muslim-dominated northern cities across 13 states. Supporters of Jonathan's nearest rival, Muhammadu Buhari, a Muslim, claimed the elections were rigged and cited an informal agreement that the presidency rotate between the Christian South and the Muslim North. Armed Muslim rioters took to the streets and burned homes, churches, and police stations. Christian reprisals quickly followed. Dozens have been killed and thousands have fled their homes. On Monday, Standard & Poor's credit rating agency downgraded its outlook on U.S. government debt from stable to negative. Though the company maintained America's AAA long-term rating, it said the government's high external debt and increasing deficit have made it a riskier investment. S&P also pointed out that it has been more than 2 years since the 2008 economic crisis began, and Congress and the White House have still done little to reverse the financial deterioration or the nation's long-standing long-term pressures. The budget deficit will reach $1.5 trillion next year, while the national debt is currently above $14.1 trillion. Markets reacted immediately to the news, with government bond prices falling along with the S&P 500. Gold jumped to a new record, and the dollar fell sharply against the euro. The nation's unsustainably high spending has long been a source of concern, but it now appears that the consequences of irresponsible financial policies are beginning to hit home. In 3 days, between April 14th and 16th, a historic tornado outbreak struck 15 states. Hundreds of tornadoes were reported in what will probably be ranked among the largest outbreaks in history. The storms killed 45 people from Oklahoma to North Carolina and beyond. As of April 18th, 617 tornadoes were recorded, 200 more than last year and 400 more than 2009. One insurance expert said this year's high tornado count could produce billions in damage and, tragically, a high number of fatalities. Over the past year, more girls than boys have joined the Scouts in Britain. Girls have been permitted to join since 1976, and all Scout troops have been legally obliged to admit girls since 2007. From February 2010 to 2011, 4,330 girls joined compared to less than 3,800 boys. Although there are still more Boy Scouts than girls, the intake figures show that British boys are losing interest in traditional masculine activities. That is this week's Trumpet.com Week in Review.